Kunda Bihari Jai Gopi Channa Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Channa Vallabha Girivaradari Jai Gopi Channa Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Channa Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunda Bihari Jai Gopi Channa Vallabha Girivaradari Jai Gopi Channa Vallabha Girivaradari Jai Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunda Bihari Jai Gopi Channa Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Channa Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Gokulananda, Radha Gokulananda, Radhe Jaya Radha Gokulananda, Radha Gokulananda, Radhe Jaya Sitaram Lakshmanano Mandaya Sitaram Lakshmanano Mandaya Sitaram Jaya Sitaram Lakshmanano Mandaya Gorangitai 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 Jaya Gorangitai Gorangitai Raya Gorangitai Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Nitai Gora Haribo 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 Gora Haribo Gora Haribo 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 Nitai Gora Haribo Gora Pramanande Haribo Jai Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Prabhupada Jaya Asutta Shishima Abai Chani Vinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Guru Vaishnava Vinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridasa Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sakho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Mura Bhakta Vinda Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopanath Shama Kund Radha Kund Gibi Govardhana Ki Jai Mayapur Vrindavan Ki Jai, Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Hare Krishna, good morning everyone. So this morning we're reading from the Caitanya-Caritāmṛta Madhya-lilā, chapter 13, and we're going, quite a few verses to be honest. We're going all the way from verse 157 and then culminating or finishing at 185. So I think we've got some clever chap there who's going to be doing that as we go along. Who remembers the old board? I just remember that. I keep turning to the left and it's just not there anymore, and I realise, it's there. When you're getting older, that's what happens. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda. Right, so as mentioned, there's actually quite a few verses today, of course, which include, of course, classical Bengali, the original Bengali that it was written in, and of course the English translation by Srila Prabhupada. So Sachi-Mata Prabhu is going to... Does your microphone work? Has it been tested? Because she's going to be assisting me with the Bengali here. Yes, that's very good. That's a good sign. It's also nice to have that, when you're doing so many verses, to have that variation. Plus she's Bengali, which kind of helps. All right. And I'm not. Okay, so what we'll do is, we're starting off with 157. If you go ahead, Sachi-Mata, Mataji.
Shei Shutragan hoite brojojan rakhite rohi rajye udashin haya jibasri putra dhane kori rajyo aborane yoduganer santosh lagiya.
I wish to protect the inhabitants of Vrindavan from the attacks of my enemies. That is why I remain in my kingdom. Otherwise, I'm indifferent to my royal position. Whatever wives, son and wealth I maintain in the kingdom are only for the satisfaction of the Yadus.
158. Tomar je premogun kore ama akorshan anibe amadin dosh bishe puno ashi brindavane brajabodhu tomashane biloshibo rajani dibashe.
Your loving qualities always attract me to Vrindavan. Indeed, they will bring me back to within 10 or 20 days, and when I return, I shall enjoy both day and night with you and all the damsels of Rajabhumi.
159. এতো তারে কহি কৃষ্ণ ব্রজে যাইতে সতৃষ্ণ এক শ্লোক পড়ি শুনাইল সেই শ্লোকে শুনি রাধা খণ্ডিল সকল বাধা কৃষ্ণ প্রাপ্তে প্রতীতি হইল.
When speaking to Srimati Radharani, Krishna became very anxious to return to Vrindavan. He made her listen to a verse which banished all her difficulties and which assured her that she would again attain Krishna.
160. Mai bhaktihi bhutanam amritotaya kalpate drishtva yadashin sneho bhavati nang madapanaha.
Lord Krishna said, devotional service unto me is the only way to attain me. My dear gopis, whatever love and affection you have attained for me by good fortune is the only reason for my returning to you. And that's a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam 10.82.44.
161. এই সব অর্থ প্রভু স্বরূপের শানে রাত্রি দিনে ঘরে বসি করে আস্বাদনে.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would sit in his room with Swarup Damodar Goswami and taste the topics of these verses day and night.
162. নৃত্যকালে সেই ভাবে আবিষ্ট হয়া শ্লোক পড়ি নাচে জগন্নাথ মুখ ছায়া.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu danced completely absorbed in ecstatic emotion while looking at the face of Lord Jagannath. He danced and recited these verses.
163. স্বরূপ গোসাইর ভাগ্য না যায় বর্ণন প্রভুতে আবিষ্ট যার কায়ে বাক্য মন. 163.
No one can describe the good fortune of Swarup Damodar Goswami, for he is always absorbed in the service of the Lord with his body, mind and words.
164. স্বরূপের ইন্দ্রিয়ে প্রভুর নিজেন্দ্রিয়গণ আবিষ্ট হয়া করে গান আস্বাদন.
The senses of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were identical with the senses of Swarup. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to become fully absorbed in tasting the singing of Swarup Damodar.
165. ভাবের আবেশে কভু ভূমিতে বসিয়া তর্জনীতে ভূমে লিখে অধমুখ হয়া.
In emotional ecstasy, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would sometimes sit on the ground and, looking down, would write on the ground with his finger.
166. অঙ্গুলিতে ক্ষত হবে জানে দামোদর ভয়ে নিজ করে নিবারয়ে প্রভু কর.
Fearing that the Lord would injure his finger by writing in this way, Swarup Damodar checked him with his own hand.
167. প্রভুর ভাবানুরূপ স্বরূপের গান যবে সেই রস তাহা করে মূর্তিমান.
Swarup Damodar used to sing exactly according to the ecstatic emotion of the Lord. Whenever a particular mellow was being tasted by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Swarup Damodar would personify it by singing.
168. শ্রী জগন্নাথের দেখে শ্রীমুখ কমল তাহার উপর সুন্দর নয়ন যুগল.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu looked upon the beautiful lotus-like faces and eyes of Lord Jagannath.
169. সূর্যের কিরণে মুখ করে ঝলমল মাল্য বস্ত্র দিব্য অলঙ্কার পরিমল.
Lord Jagannath was garlanded, dressed with nice garments and adorned with beautiful ornaments. His face was glittering from the rays of the sunshine, and the entire atmosphere was fragrant.
170. প্রভুর হৃদয়ে আনন্দ সিন্ধু উথলিল উন্মাদ ঝঞ্ঝাবাত তৎক্ষণেই উঠিল।
An ocean of transcendental bliss expanded in the heart of Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and symptoms of madness immediately intensified like a hurricane.
171 আনন্দ নাদে উঠায় ভাবের তরঙ্গ, নানা ভাব সৈন্যে উপজিল যুদ্ধরঙ্গ।
The madness of transcendental bliss created waves of various emotions. The emotions appeared like opposing soldiers staging a fight.
172 ভাবোদয় ভাবশান্তি সন্ধি সাবল্য, সঞ্চারী স্বাত্বিক স্থায়ী স্বভাব প্রাবল্য।
There was an increase in all the natural emotional symptoms. Thus, there were awakening emotions, peacefulness, joined, mixed, transcendental and prevalent emotions, and perpetuities for emotion.
173 প্রভুর শরীর যেন শুদ্ধ হিমাচল, ভাব পুষ্পদ্রুম তাহে পুষ্পিত সকল।
Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's body appeared like a transcendental Himalayan mountain bearing ecstatic emotional flower trees, all of them blooming.
174 দেখিতে আকর্ষয়ে সবার চিত্ত মন, প্রেমামৃত বৃষ্টি প্রভু সিঞ্চে সবার মন।
The sight of all these symptoms attracted everyone's mind and consciousness. Indeed, the Lord sprinkled everyone's mind with the nectar of transcendental love of Godhead.
175 জগন্নাথ সেবক যত রাজপাত্রগণ, যাত্রিক লোক নীলাচলবাসী যতজন।
He sprinkled the minds of the servants of Lord Jagannath, the government officers, the pilgrim visitors, the general populace, and all the residents of Jagannath Puri.
176 প্রভুর নৃত্য প্রেম দেখি হয় চমৎকার, কৃষ্ণ প্রেম উছলিল হৃদয়ে সবার।
Upon seeing the dancing and ecstatic love of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, everyone became astonished. In their hearts they became infatuated with love of Krishna.
177 প্রেমে নাচে গায় লোক করে কোলাহল, প্রভুর নৃত্য দেখি সবে আনন্দে বিহ্বল।
Everyone danced and chanted in ecstatic love, and a great noise resounded. Everyone was overwhelmed with transcendental bliss just to see the dancing of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu.
178 অন্যের কি কাজ জগন্নাথ হলধর, প্রভুর নৃত্য দেখি সুখে চলিলাম মন্থর।
Apart from the others, even Lord Jagannath and Lord Balaram, with great happiness, began to move very slowly upon seeing the dancing of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu.
179 কভু সুখে নৃত্য রঙ্গ দেখে রথ রাখি, সে কৌতুকে যে দেখিল সেই তার সাক্ষী।
Lord Jagannath and Lord Balaram sometimes stopped the car and happily observed Lord Chaitanya's dancing. Anyone who was able to see them stop and watch the dancing bore witness to their pastimes.
180 এই মতো প্রভু নৃত্য করিতে ভ্রমিতে, প্রতাপ রুদ্রের আগে লাগিলা পড়িতে।
When Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu was dancing and wandering in this way, he fell down in front of Maharaj Prataparudra.
181 সম্ভ্রমে প্রতাপরুদ্র প্রভুকে ধরিল, তাহাকে দেখিতে প্রভুর বাহ্য জ্ঞান হইল।
Maharaj Prataparudra picked up the Lord with great respect, but upon seeing the king, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to his external senses.
182 রাজা দেখি মহাপ্রভু করেন ধিক্কার, ছি ছি বিষয়ীর স্পর্শ হইল আমার।
After seeing the king, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu condemned himself, saying, "Oh, how pitiful it is that I have touched a person who is interested in mundane affairs."
183. আবেশেতে নিত্যানন্দ না হইলা সাবধানে, কাশীশ্বর গোবিন্দ আছিলা অন্য স্থানে।
Not even Lord Nityananda Prabhu, Kashivara or Govinda took care of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he fell down. Nityananda was in great ecstasy and Kishara and Govinda were elsewhere.
184. যদ্যপি রাজার দেখি হাড়ির সেবন, প্রসন্ন হয়াছে তারে মিলিবারে মন।
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had already been satisfied by the king's behaviour, for the king had accepted the service of a sweeper for Lord Jagannath. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually desired to see the king. So, thank you very much, Sachi-Mata. Well, that was wonderful. Thank you so much indeed. I appreciate that. You got the job. All right. So now we're going to go into the verse, which will be attempted by my humble self. Let's have a look here. What we do to save a bit of time, we'll probably, let's see. Tatapi apangane karite sarvadan, bahi kinchu rasabas kaila bhagavan. I'll try that again and we can open up for others if they like. Tatapi apangane karite sarvadan, bahi kinchu rasabas kaila bhagavan. Anybody? Okay. Bhai kinchu rasabas kaila bhagavan. Maybe one of the ladies can try? Sachi-Mata? Go on, let's see if she can do it.
তথাপি আপনগণে করিতে সাবধান, বাইরে কিছু রোষাভাস কইলা ভগবান।
Tatapi apangane karite sabhadan, baye kinchu rasabas kaila bhagavan. Because it did many verses today, so I think we'll just kind of move on to So the English translation, however, just to warn his personal associates, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, externally expressed feelings of anger, externally expressed. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. This is the first purport, by the way. This is why we had to do so many verses. When Maharaj Pratapuruja asked to see the Lord, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately refused, saying, Niskinchanasya bhagavat bhajano mukhasya param param jikamaso bhavasakarasya sandasanam visayinam mata yositam cha sahanta hanta visapaksanato pisadu. And that's actually the 823, the Chaitanya Chandrodaya Natak. Prabhupada continues. The word Niskinchanasya refers to a person who has finished his material activities. Such a person can begin to execute his activities in Krishna consciousness to cross over the ocean of nescience. It is very dangerous for such a person to have intimate relationships with mundane people or to become intimately related to women. This formality is to be observed by anyone who is serious about going back home, back to Godhead. To teach his personal associates these principles, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu expressed external anger when touched by the king. Since the Lord was very much satisfied with the humble behaviour of the king, he intentionally allowed the king to touch him. But externally, he expressed anger just to warn his personal associates. Om Jnanam Tiriram Dasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Taksho Om Itam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Tadati Svapadantikam He Krishna Kuruna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namustate Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devai Godavani Pacharine Nivasesha Shunyavadi Prashachade Satarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. It's the last verse again. However, just to warn his personal associates, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, externally expressed feelings of anger. So there's several things here amongst these many verses we went through today. Several. The main context here, of course, it's Ratha Yatra. And it's in 500 years ago in Puri, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is dancing ecstasy and having internal realizations. And also at the beginning, we were learning about Krishna speaking to the gopis. Of course, that happened 4,500 years before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But Mahaprabhu was in ecstasy. Internally, he was experiencing this. Mahima, Mahima. He was completely absorbed. He was in Vrindavan. Oh, how he longed to be with the cowherd damsels of Vraj. So he wasn't, externally he may have been there dancing along the Grand Marg in Jagannath Puri, but internally, of course, he was with Krishna in Vrindavan in the mood of Radha Rani. Thus, when we begin this particular set of verses, it's beginning with Krishna speaking to the gopis. And this is blended in with Caitanya-Lila, for they're non-different. And this is what I took from today. From verse 160, actually, Prabhupada, in a very, very short purport, says this is a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam 10.82.44. This is when Krishna is saying to Radharani, devotional service unto me is the only way to attain me. My dear gopis, whatever love and affection you have attained from me by good fortune is the only reason for my returning to you. Of course, the specific context here, tied in with Ratha Yatra, is that Krishna's return to them. It's he went to the solar eclipse in Kurukshetra. By this time he was already based in Dwarka and had already left Vrindavan. So of course all the gopis and the gopas and all the residents of Vrindavan who were missing him so much, they came, must have been a few hundred miles actually, in their caravans and everything like that, the carts, packed up the village and came to see Krishna, Balaram and of course Subhadra in the holy place of Kurukshetra. This is before the war, of course. But anyway, what does 10.82.44 say? Rendering devotional service to me qualifies any living being for eternal life, but by your good fortune you have developed a special loving attitude towards me, by which you have attained me. Prabhupada writes, according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, the gopis then replied, but that Supreme Lord you are blaming is none other than yourself, O most clever of speakers. Everyone in the world knows this. Why should we be ignorant of this fact? All right, Lord Krishna told them, if this is true, I must be God, but I'm still conquered by your loving affection. So this is the main narrative. This is what Krishna's relationship with Radharani, of course, and all the other gopis, is based on. That bhakti is the one thing that is stronger than God himself. Pure bhakti, at least. Let's see what else. There's references in 185, verse 185, the reference to Caitanya-Caritāmṛta Natak. Natak, of course, Sanskrit meaning drama or dance. And it's a Sanskrit drama written by Kavi Karnapura, a 16th century Bengali poet. So those are some of the context. But I just wanted to read a little bit now about the context of Ratha Yatra. Of course, we know from other things like the story of Indradumna Swami, who back in the Satya Yuga was had carved the images of Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra based on logs that had came into the beach at Puri. And it was way back in the Satyuga, actually, that King Indradyumna actually had the Jagannath deities installed a long, long time ago. And this was this ecstatic form of the Lord. This kind of, the love of Godhead that Jagannath, Baladeva and Subhadra, this love of the gopis, they were experiencing this ecstatic love, the eyes wide and their limbs contorted like this, you see, that's the form. But that form actually goes back all the way, millions of years in time. And Lord Brahma was invited down to actually do the inauguration of that original Jagannath temple very, very long time ago. So in one way or the other, Lord Jagannath has been worshipped in Puri since the Satyuga. But the Rath cart, the Rath Yatra, of course, which ISKCON is most famous for, can be dated back to the time of Lord Krishna, because the gopis of Vrindavan and the residents, they built this cart for Jagannath, Baladev and Subhadra, and they bought it and they seated upon the cart in Kurukshetra, etc., and all the gopis and the gopas, they just pulled those cart. So to my understanding, that's the original Rath Yatra festival, which then, of course, got taken up in Puri. It just says here that, accompanied by his brother Balaram and sister Subhadra, and all the other generals of the Yadu dynasty, because it wasn't just Krishna that went to Kurukshetra at that time, it was all the Yadus and the generals and the politicians and the relatives. It was a big social affair. He arrived, and with many of the heads of state, the gathering of leaders, along with their wives, made for a magnificent religious, diplomatic and social occasion. In particular, the young gopis could not tolerate even a moment without seeing Krishna, when at an early age, Krishna reluctantly left Vrindavan to take up princely duties. The gopis were devastated and longed day and night for his return. Hearing that Krishna would be at Kurukshetra for the solar eclipse, all Vrindavan prepared to go, loading gifts and belongings on ox carts. The simple rural residents made their way north to the Gala Royal Assembly. And of course, the rest we are familiar with. So it's a very beautiful pastime. You imagine, so this is the connection. This is the context. So when, by the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Rath Yatra cart festival had already been well established for thousands of years before Mahaprabhu. But for him, when he was there dancing in emotional ecstasy, of course, one of the reasons for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's descent was to taste the love that Radharani had for Lord Krishna. So he's the personification of that. So these things, when he was in the Rath Yatra, he was completely absorbed somewhere else. And yet we read a little bit also about, just momentarily he snapped out of this because he wanted to engage Maharaj Prataparudra. But when this happened, we also understand at the time, before the Rath Yatra, before that moment, Maharaj Prataparudra, the king of Orissa, wanted darshan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was actually a great, great devotee. And at that time, within across North India, actually, it was one of the provinces that had not been invaded by the Mughals at the time. The Orissa was actually a stronghold for Vedic culture at the time, 500 years ago. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by this time was a sannyasi. And again, as we've been reading, he wanted to set the example, not just for his associates, but for the world, really. This is what being a sannyasi means. And it means not hanging around with kings or politicians or at least not being dictated to by them. But Mahaprabhu was very, very strict. Of course, at any time in history, but particularly at this time, taking sannyas was a big deal, actually. In the Kali Yuga as well. Even when Mahaprabhu wanted to take sannyas, initially that was a big shock, especially for Sachi-mata, and everyone was crying and crying and crying to see the lovely locks of his wavy black hair being removed by a reluctant barber. But he did take sannyas for preaching purposes. But he didn't want to see the king. But since Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not agree to see Maharaj Prataparudra, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Rai Ramananda and other associates told Maharaj Prataparudra, Mahaprabhu is very satisfied and pleased with you, and he's given you so much mercy, especially because you are a simple person, having engaged in service of the Lord as a sweeper. Of course, even in the many ISKCON Rath Yatras, and of course in Puri today, the present king of Orissa, or maybe we would get some other people when they would sweep the road, whether it's Hyde Park, or whether it's the Haymarket, or Trafalgar Square, or the Grand Marg in Puri, that they traditionally, a politician of some kind would sweep the street to make way for Lord Jagannath, you see. So there's a whole Leela there. But of course, Maharaj Prataparudra did that as well. He was so humble, he swept. And he was a powerful king, actually. But he was weakened, he was sick of mundane affairs, and just wanted Krishna Bhakti. So they said, listen, why don't you go to Mahaprabhu dressed as a Brahmana? This is how you get, take off your robes, take off your crown or whatever he was wearing at the time. Just wear a dhoti, wear a chadar, get out your Brahman thread, and just recite the pastimes of the gopis to Mahaprabhu. Then that will please him. That will please Mahaprabhu. So they said, listen, go to Mahaprabhu in the Gundicha Mandir, in the garden. There you'll see Mahaprabhu. He'll be lamenting continually in Srimati Radharani's mood. And at that time, Maharaj, you should approach him and sing the sweet Gopi Gita, which is actually recounted in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, 31, verses 1 to 19. We'll do a sample of them now, but we won't have time for all of that. So Maharaj Prataparudra went in there and saw Mahaprabhu there on the ground, just absorbed, listening, just meditating on the sweet love between Radha and Krishna after just finishing an ecstatic Rath Yatra festival. And there, a king dressed as a Brahmin, it was just the two of them, slightly approaches them and he pays obeisances to Mahaprabhu. And then he starts singing from chanting from the Gopi Gita. One of the verses, I'll give you a sample from that. The gopis said, O beloved, your birth in the land of Raj has made it exceedingly glorious, and thus Indira, the goddess of fortune, always resides here. We cannot live without you, and only maintain our lives for your sake. We have been searching everywhere for you, so please show yourself to us. Tavakatamritam tapta jivanam kavibiditam kalmashapaham svabhavamangalam Srimaratatam bhuvi grinanti te puridajana. The nectar of your words and descriptions of your activities of the life and soul of those who are suffering in this material world. When these narrations are transmitted by learned sages, they eradicate one's sinful reactions and bestow good fortune upon whoever hears them. They are broadcast all over the world, and they are filled with spiritual power. Certainly those who spread the message of Godhead are most munificent. Mahaprabhu wakes up from his transit. Of course, he knows Maharaj Prataparudra is there. He goes, no, you are the most munificent, the most munificent. You do not realize what you have given me, reciting these verses. Who are you? I don't know who you are. And of course, that threw Maharaj Prataparudra. It's me, I'm dressed as a Brahmin, I've just come for your darshan. And Mahaprabhu was, you are noble, you are a great person, you are a noble king. And Maharaj Prataparudra said, no king am I. I'm simply here just to bow down and take the dust of your lotus feet. And so this wonderful exchange happened actually, just at the end of the Rath Yatra in Puri there, between Maharaj Prataparudra and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I admit I forget the details. But this was one of the most beautiful pastimes that you can find in the Sri Caitanya-Caritāmṛta, because it's about something else. It's about Mahaprabhu externally saying, oh, he's a king. No, I'm a sannyasi. No women, no kings, no politicians, no councillors, whatever you are. However, when there's bhakti penetrates everything. Bhakti is more powerful than God himself, at least God allows that. He reciprocates with bhakti more than anything. He is obedient to Radharani's love. And that is manifested here in this pastime. In the sense that the bhakti of Mahārāja Prataparudra, despite the fact he was a king, was enough for the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to give him his mercy in this context. So this is his arrangement, but it was a private affair. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not publicly embrace Mahārāja Prataparudra, especially when he was dressed as a king. Or he didn't go to his palace, for example. He was taking the sannyas order very, very seriously. He actually took sannyas. He didn't need to take sannyas. Mahaprabhu didn't need to take sannyas. He was God himself, the incarnation of Radha and Krishna combined, actually. He didn't need to. He could do what he likes. But at that time, especially, in fact, for all time really, if someone's saffron shaven head as a sannyasi, then it tends to get the attention of the general populace, more so than if someone is not a renunciate. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, let's just get into this. But being sannyasi also meant he had to set that example. So embracing the king or conversing with the king had to be done in this special context. And in fact, because of Mahārāja Prataparudra's insistence and his devotion, and especially sweeping the path in front of Lord Jagannath himself, Mahaprabhu gave him his mercy. In fact, he gave him more mercy than anyone else. So that's a very wonderful thing. Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. He is the supreme enjoyer. He is the soul of all souls, the original supreme person. The original person. Therefore, everything is connected to him. We are not him. But at the same time, we are his part and parcel. Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva, simultaneous oneness and difference between the living entity, the individual souls, and the personality of Godhead. Krishna does not fall down to this material world. But when he comes to this material world, he comes in his form of his incarnations to help us conditioned souls. It's difficult. It's very, very difficult. I mean, obviously, when you're on the level of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of course, or pure devotees, or including, of course, Mahārāja Prataparudra, they don't have the mundane vision. People go to the physical Vrindavan, they may find themselves surrounded by traffic or Loy Bazaar or whatever. But beyond the externals of the holy places is the pastimes of Lord Krishna. But that takes advancement, it takes patience, it takes bhakti, and it takes faith. Because the Vrindavan, as manifested 5,000 years ago and also visible physically today, is actually, it's actually non-different from the point of view of the advanced to Goloka Vrindavan in the spiritual world, Krishna's planet, a planet, a realm without beginning, without end, the origin of all things. Can we perceive that? Are we qualified? Well, I'm not. But we can try. We can try. Through chanting and through sincerity, we can absorb ourselves more and more. What I wanted to do, it's 8:30, I just wanted to finish the last part of the class by reading a little bit about Krishna Lila. I felt that was probably apt, given everything that we've been listening to so far. The Shiva Ram Swami actually published a lot of books, actually, those who are familiar with many of his books, including the likes of Na Prayo Hum, for example. How can I ever repay you, says Krishna to the gopis. But this is based on the writings of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So I thought I'd just finish for about five minutes or so, just reading from a section I felt was very, very nice. It's describing Vrindavan. So hopefully we can try to absorb ourselves, or at least to use our imagination to taste just a little bit of that real Vrindavan. This is in a chapter that Shiva Ram Swami has called Questions by the Gopis. The hand-like waves of the Yamuna river offered blooming lotuses to Sri Krishna, seated as he was upon the moonlit expanse of her sandy banks. Although some lotuses normally open during the day and others at night, in the presence of the moon-like Sham and the sun-like Radha, both kinds of flowers felt justified to display their charms. To invigorate the love-weary gopis, a refreshing breeze carried the scent of fragrant kund flowers from the distant shore. This breeze caused the vines and trees, which were illuminated by the full moon and decorated with many aromatic flowers, to tremble in ecstasy. In the same way, Hari and his girlfriends, who were illuminated by the effulgence of prem and decorated with ornaments of bliss, quivered in each other's association. The forest in Vrindavan's autumn season appeared before Sri Krishna like an inexhaustible treasure chest. The trees were dark jade bracelets, the flowers multicoloured pearls, the Yamuna a swirling wand of transcendental gems, and the animals golden figurines. The moon was a matchless moonstone, the stars shimmering diamonds, the ripened fruit the best of rubies, and the leaves of tulsi exquisite emeralds. These divine ornaments, which surpassed in excellence the choicest gems of Lord Narayan's treasury, were even further exalted by the presence of Raja's foremost jewel, that magnificent sapphire, Sri Krishna, set within the golden lotus petals of the fair-faced gopis upon a silver locket of moonlit sand. Earlier, when the gopis were feeling the torment of separation, their songs of sorrow caused the entire forest of Vrindavan to stand still. The flowers, trees, birds, and forest creatures wilted in distress, and their tears transformed into waterfalls that nourished the silence. Now that Govinda and his consorts had met once again, the vines, bees, deer, and fish, showered by the nectarian vision of that reunion, were revived by their inertia. They sprouted in happiness and blossomed with new life. The cuckoos sang sweetly on the fifth note. The bees hummed like the veena of Cupid. And the peacocks meowed as only they could do. Meow, meow. Thus Vrindavan forest, freshly bathed in moonlight and gently moved by the wind, joyfully offered her dear birds and bees as embellishments to Sri Krishna's pastimes. Seated among the gopis, turning his attention to the forest, Sri Krishna greeted its creatures with a smile. Responding to their master, Vrindavan pleased his senses with their innumerable attributes. Her singing birds caressed his ears. Her cooling breezes soothed his skin, and ripening fruits satisfied his tongue. Her dancing moonbeams entertained his eyes, and her exotic flowers gratified his nose. Vrishabhanu's fair-faced daughter picked 2 slightly blooming asoka clusters, and, her hand shivering with shyness, placed them on Sri Hari's ears. In return, Sri Krishna smiled sweetly, his mind and senses completely satisfied in the pleasing atmosphere. To fulfill the unspoken dire desire of the gopis, Shyamasundar placed his lotus feet on their laps. As certain gopis opened their braids to massage his feet with their hair, others fanned Hari, and yet others offered trays containing refreshing beverages, fruits, and betel. I think I'll stop there. So thank you for listening. Thank you for bearing with me on that. Does anyone else have anything to add to today? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Hi Krishna, the assembled Vaishnavas ki! Double job.
Hare Krishna.